Hello, everybody. I believe we are live now. Welcome in everybody from Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. We're a Trimulcast. And bonus, if you're watching afterwards or listening afterwards on a podcast, we're putting this on the Peristyle podcast stream. So a lot of streams, but we're glad to have all you guys here. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined alongside Ryan Abraham and Shotgun Spratling. Today we're going to be talking about the second week of fall camp. We're almost done with that second week. Also, injury updates. We have a lot of injury updates, and Shotgun has been tracking every day, so we will be very detailed as far as that goes. Of course, the quarterback battle will tell you what we saw on Saturday's scrimmage and what we've seen this week. And then the Coliseum renovation. Ryan and I got to go to the Coliseum yesterday and tour the final renovations for the 2018 season. And we even got to sign a beam, right, Ryan?
Yeah, we got to sign a beam. The final beam that was put up there. We got some pictures and stuff. We want to make this an interactive show. Tunnel Vision, this is our 4th episode.
It is.
So we're getting into a little bit of rhythm here. It looks like the technical stuff, I think it's okay. But we're on YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. And I was going to try to do like an Instagram thing, but I don't think we're going to do that. Keely said that's a little overboard what's going on. But we got a lot to get to. And if you have any questions or comments, you can put them into, we'll try to monitor all 3 channels. The Facebook ones, if you're on the Facebook live feed, those will go right up on the screen when Keely puts them up there, so that's kind of cool. So it's a little neat little feature. So if you get to a chance to go on the Facebook feed, if you put a comment in there, we can put it actually live up on the screen and answer your question as we go. Well, what do you want? You want to start with the Coliseum? What do you want to start with, Keely?
Yeah, let's start with the Coliseum, I guess. Danny and I got a tour around March, or right after the Todd McNair trial. So for us, it was kind of a little bit more of the same. But we did get to see the new seats, the new press box, the final beam, like we said. Ryan, what were your general thoughts about the tour, since this was your first time touring?
Yeah, so I got like kind of a private presentation from Steve Lopes earlier than you guys got. But then, the more things are coming into play. So I think a lot of parking, if you look at that lot that's along Vermont, there was like lot 1A and 2A and 2, whatever those lots were, they're all gone. That's all going to be the Lucas Museum. There's a park there. There's going to be like the spaceship-looking museum. There will be more parking spaces there in 2019, but not in 2018. In 2018, it's a construction zone. It's a huge hole. You will walk by there. So there'll be actually more spots. The problem is all of that tailgating space is gone. So I'm not sure what they're going to do for RVs. There's a lot of stuff going on there. There's also now not access completely around the Coliseum Bowl. So you will have an assigned gate for your ticket where you want to go. They encourage you to go early. But if you go into, say, gate 1 and you need to get over to section 11, you can't get through there because there's a construction zone in the way. So there's a lot going on there. The new seats are really cool. I sat down in a old row and a new row, and I'm 6'3". My knees hit in the old row. They did not hit in the new row. So it was a significant difference. It's supposed to be about 3 inches of leg room that's better. So, but the final beam was there. We didn't really quite understand when we were showing up what this was going to be, but final beam was, it was like this, basically the final beam that they're putting in there, and they let all of us sign it, even us media folks. But there was like, big boosters there signing it, a lot of the, head of construction companies and stuff, and we signed it too.
Okay, we dropped out on Facebook, and then when I tried to restart it, we need a new IP address for the new Facebook, because we can't reconnect to Facebook.
Really?
Yes. So we're out on Facebook right now.
Oh, man.
I know.
Technical problems?
I know.
Do you want to switch seats or something? Or?
Sure, we can switch over.
We're going to do a little switch seats, and I'm going to try to restart the Facebook.
Technical difficulties here.
I know.
I'll let you guys talk, and I'll fix this stuff, hopefully.
Are you putting us on a 2-shot?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay.
So I did not go to the Coliseum.
You did not?
I slept in. But what do you kind of think the experience will be like for the fans that are sitting on that side? How much does it seem like those seats are different, maybe in that area, and then maybe even, when you're up above, how many of those seats are going to be blocked off, even the ones that are still there?
Yeah, it's definitely a different experience. I am partial to the hefty, old-fashioned seats. I don't know why. I like that heft, and these are kind of plastic. They're a little smaller. I don't know if I was a fan, if I would like it. I don't want to throw that biased negativity out just yet, but I am a little questioning the seats. Also, someone tweeted at me that in the original preview, there were supposed to be cup holders in the seats, and they're not there. in these seating arrangements. So I don't know if that's like something you buy to add on, if that's coming later.
From looking at the pictures they had, it looked like there was bars in the back, so maybe that's something you could slot on top of the bars there, something like that. In the back of the seats, did you see that? Or the rows of seats, they had bars in the back of them?
I didn't see that.
No?
Okay.
So it looked like that to me. Now maybe I'm incorrect in remembering what it was, but from the view of it, I've seen those same type of seats in some newer stadiums, and the question becomes durability with those compared to the older, more hefty seats that you're talking about. So we'll see if they have to like change out seats a bunch or anything like that.
Yeah.
Just the overall viewing experience from when we were in the Coliseum, looking, up at the big spaceship that's there.
Yeah, well, how do you describe it?
Wait, what do they call it? The scholarship?
I don't know what the official term
Scholarship
is.
Tower, I
The
think it is.
Scholarship Tower,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Which is a
Tower.
weird name to me. But it is very, it looms out over the stadium. So it kind of closes in the stadium to an extent. Kind of like the Rose Bowl, it feels very wide open. Even though you can fit 90,000 people, it doesn't feel like they're on top of you if you've been to some other stadium.
Yeah.
The biggest capacity stadium I've been to was Neyland Stadium for a Tennessee game. And even though I was sitting in the very top row of the stadium, it felt like you're on top of the action because everything's kind of pushed up on top. It kind of pushes the stadium seating above other people. It feels like, or it's more straight up rather than outward, like the Rose Bowl is. So I feel like that tower is going to maybe make it feel like you're on top. The fans are on top of the players a little bit more. So that might give them a little bit more of a home field advantage in an actual impact there. And one of the other things I talked about is it depends on how they construct that tower. If the glass on the front is straight up and down, then the sound is going to reverberate off that, and it's going to make the stadium even louder than it is right now. Now, if they cut those out and those are kind of like patio areas for the donors and all that stuff, then it's going to suck all that sound in, and you're going to lose all that sound. So depending on how they do it will depend on how much that gives an extra home field advantage, I think. I think it's the way it is now, and because it is such a kind of a monstrosity in the middle of the field, that it will create a home field advantage because it'll play more on top of the players, the opposing players, than it currently does.
There's so much that we don't know, and there's so much that USC. It's all kind of going. The Rams were there, the USC was there. This is kind of a weird situation, parking wise. Like when you're trying to get in there, the Washington State game's a Friday night game. They were asked, hey, what's going to be the parking situation? Because typically you can't park on campus for a weekday game. There's no more paid parking lots at the Coliseum. There's only permit spots. So you can't park at the Coliseum. And if you can't park at USC, they still didn't know what was going on there. And I don't think they're going to know, like you were saying, the fan experience. They said how many seats are gone, but if you go up there, that building is big. Like the sections right next to it, it's going to be really hard to see around it. So seeing it in person, it's a little bit crazy. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with it, but it's there's some potential problems there.
We'll see if there's any obstructive view seats and if those are sold differently or if they just completely eliminate those. I thought one of the interesting things were the terraces that they had, and I'm interested to see how those play out. They're for Trojan Athletic Fund members and students. So how does that kind of play out? Because the two of the terraces on each side of the peristyle. The students aren't on that second, on the side that's closest to the press box. So are they going to be allowed to go over there?
No. So there's two, basically what Shotgun's saying, around the peristyle, kind of in the corner of the end zones on the peristyle side. There's two 4-level terraces where it's like an outdoor space where you can hang out. I think you can drink. The one of them is only for scholarship level. So basically people in the tower, I believe that's the donor level that you have to be in that group. And you have to get a wristband because it's limited. I think it's up to 450 people or so. And then on the student side, same thing. You can get a wristband as a student, but every student can't go in there. It's going to be limited because there's only a certain amount of spaces. But it's an area where you can congregate and hang out and chat and things like that. So I think our Facebook Live is back, right?
I think we are back.
Yeah. I think I fixed it.
Yeah, sorry. It crashed. We are back. We scheduled something, so then you got to go to a new Facebook, so that's why you're on a different one. But our comments are a little off, but I'm trying to fix that.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're back. Okay, but now to football. Fall camp week 2. We didn't get a chance to talk about the Saturday scrimmage because we do our live shows on Thursday. Seems like Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and JT Daniels were the stars of the show.
They're pretty good.
Seems like they were definitely the stars of the show.
So JT Daniels was 10 of 12, 4 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown, it was 4 or 5 catches, 3 touchdowns. I don't know.
Probably, I think Gerard kind of figured it up to be at least 160 yards, probably 160, 180, somewhere in there. So that's a pretty good showing.
Yeah,
in your first, true outing with the team.
And you want to, USC has inherent advantages. There's just advantages, and you have those two guys basically in your backyard that. 5-star players that could come in and be really impressive right away. If you're recruiting at LSU, you might travel like 3 states over to find one guy like that, not people that could take a bus from modern day, from Santa Ana to USC. So there's some advantages there, and USC got them, which is a big deal. Kudos to Clay Helton for being able to get those guys, but they've been absolutely special. So if you're talking about true freshmen that can make an impact, those are 1A and 1B. I mean, those are the two guys that there's a lot of guys on defense I think that could potentially contribute, but those two guys look like right away, bam, they can come in and do something special.
Yeah, and I think I was more impressed with Amon than I was JT. JT, when he wasn't throwing to Amon, he was, I think, 1 of 3. But why would you throw to someone else when Amon's doing so well? And to begin with, and then the 2-minute drill, he spread it around a little bit more. I don't even know if Amon was on with him at the same time then. But Amon also had Amon-Ra had some other catches leading up to that final period. So I was a little bit more impressed with him than I was JT Daniels. Not to say that I wasn't impressed with both of them. But I thought he was the number 1 star of the day for me, Amon-Ra. I thought he was tremendous. And a lot of talk afterwards was about how he can make catches even though he's not a 6'4" receiver, that he can make catches on the outside too. Yeah. And he had 3 touchdowns, 1 on the right side, which is a back shoulder throw from JT. Good timing when those two guys, after a long bomb that he caught over, I believe it was Isaiah Langley, where he gave just a little bit of an arm push to create the separation. And there were referees there, and there was no flag thrown. He does those small things that creates that extra bit of separation to help him catch balls that a lot of guys don't know how to do coming into college, and they have to learn, and that's part of the process for them. He does all those things already. The first one was on the right side. His second touchdown was over the middle on a deep post where he got behind a third-string safety, I believe. But also, he had one-on-one with Isaac Taylor-Stewart, I believe, to begin the coverage. And then I don't know if he was supposed to pass him off to the safety, but he was there. Both those guys were battling for it. And both of them had a chance at the ball, and Amon-Ra pulls it away. And then his third touchdown was a double move, the very final play of the scrimmage, where he beats Elijah Griffin on the other side for a touchdown to finish the practice off. So, 1 on each side, so that he can do stuff over the middle, he can do stuff on the outsides. I thought it was just a complete performance from Amon-Ra in that one.
He had yesterday in practice, he had a non-catch that I was really impressed with when we were watching, where he was running more of like a slant, kind of coming towards the middle of the end zone. It was a deeper ball, and the ball was thrown basically, so he was, running like this. The ball thrown over his right shoulder. So, full stride, full speed, he's able to adjust his route and kind of give himself a chance. I think a lot of people would have seen that ball and just bailed. He kind of adjusted to it, turned around, and got the ball into his arm somehow, and it went to the ground with the defender on him, and it ended up popping out. But it was like an almost catch. But just the adjustment he was able to make to give himself a chance to make the catch, I thought was really impressive.
And I've said before, I think he's the best wide receiver I've seen coming out of high school. I also think JT Daniels is the best quarterback I've seen coming out of high school in my limited experience. I'm not Gerard. I don't have 15 years of recruiting experience. But I think those guys are 2 of the best that I've seen. And the things that they do, I love when I watched JT as a sophomore, that he was able to run the entire offense himself. They would call a play at the beginning of the drive, it looked like, and then he would adjust routes, for individual receivers looking at the defense and different things like that. That was kind of unheard of, seeing as a sophomore high school quarterback doing that. And then Amon-Ra, just watching him in 7-on-7 tournaments and then in games, he just is a complete wide receiver. He can do everything that you want, even though he doesn't have the 6'4" frame that you would love to see. I mean, if he had that, I think he's, potential 1-1 pick.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think he's going to be, Calvin Johnson or one of those guys that goes number 1 overall, but I think he has first-round potential for sure. I think both of those guys are NFL guys in the future.
Yeah, he's going to have a lot of production, I think, in college. And then he's not going to have the huge body, but he's really well built. So I think that he'll have a lot of the measurables too. But his production, I think, my opinion, is going to be off the charts.
Now, those were the only two guys that stood out, though, in the fall camp. I mean, we had top 10 performers, and there were a number of defensive linemen that were on that list. Also, since we're already going to have a lot of questions about the quarterbacks, obviously, Jack Sears, I thought, was really good in the scrimmage. Now, he wasn't JT Daniels good, obviously, but he was, 7 of 9? Now, he almost threw what would have been a pick six. It was called for, there was an offsides or a false start called, so it wouldn't have counted as a play. But it was not a very good throw that he came up and immediately released. But he also had the best deep ball of the day, I think, throwing to Josh Motorbebe, possibly the highlight of the day, with a deep ball that he throws perfectly placed over, I think it was Elijah Griffin on that play to Josh Motorbebe. He kind of breaks free of him and then runs it in for a 75-yard touchdown or 75-plus yard touchdown. So we didn't have exact measurements on those. But I thought that he looked really good, and I thought he was the best quarterback during Monday's practice. Now, the last 2 days, they haven't really thrown the ball.
Yeah.
It's been very run-oriented, run-heavy, and I didn't think that the Jack looked great yesterday. I didn't, but the other 2 days, when he had an opportunity, I thought he was the best-looking quarterback on Monday and not really Tuesday. He didn't really throw much at all, did he? I don't know. One throw on Tuesday in the competitive period. But on Monday, I thought he was the best-looking quarterback, and on Saturday, I thought he looked really good, even though he didn't have the same numbers as JT Daniels. So I think that competition is still going.
Yeah, well, let me chime in here because a lot of people are saying when you guys started going on your rant about JT Daniels, everyone was like, well, let's just cut to the chase. Will you guys be shocked if JT Daniels doesn't get the job? And now it seems like right now Sears and Daniels are kind of neck and neck, but in scrimmage-like situations, Daniels' team seems to shine.
Yeah. So after Saturday, it's pretty clear. Okay, he's really good. But Jack Sears, like Shotgun was saying, he was very impressive too. He had a couple of touchdown passes, and Matt Fink just wasn't on that same sort of level. Then come Monday, practice comes around, and they gave about 25 reps to Jack Sears, about 25 reps in these competitive team periods to JT Daniels. And Matt Fink had 10. And I asked Clay Helton about that, and he said, no, it's just a rotation. It was a different kind of rotation than what we've seen, but I think that's what the rotation is going to be this week because we've seen that drop off. 2 days ago, there was hardly any pass. I think there were 7 passes thrown the whole practice, in those team periods. And then yesterday, it was a day where JT Daniels only had 4 attempts. He completed all 4 of them, so he looked pretty good. I think Jack Sears didn't have the best day. He was 3 of 7, and Matt Fink got the majority of it. So he was getting the first reps with the first team and things like that. So I think he had 13 of them, but not a lot overall in general either. So my opinion is I think it's a 2-person race now. I don't think it's, it looks like JT Daniels is probably the guy that's going to win the job. But I would say, Jack Sears has still done enough that he's close. I think Matt Fink had a really good day yesterday, so maybe he's kind of thrown himself back into the mix. But I think at some point, and probably after this weekend scrimmage on Saturday, we don't have practice for a couple of days. Tuesday, you're going to come back. My opinion would be Tuesday you come back, and it's going to be down to 2 people. Maybe he picks one, but I would think by Tuesday you'll have 2 people.
At some point, you have to start limiting those reps and give the 2 guys that are competing at the top or just the first guy. So you want to get those first team reps for someone so that they have an opportunity to get in sync with the offense and all those type of things. Now, these guys have been rotating between first and second string, and there's been a lot of volatility there with who was on first and second string because of the number of injuries they've had and different things. So I think they're all getting kind of accustomed to a lot of different guys, but you want to kind of get in that rhythm with the first string guys as much as possible when you can eventually. Now, granted, UNLV doesn't present as tough of a competition as when you're facing Alabama in the first game, when it's Sam Darnold versus Max Brown. So maybe the competition will go on maybe a week longer because we saw in that competition Max Brown was named the starter after the salute to Troy. So you saw those guys basically at the end of this week. So this scrimmage coming up would be the determining factor there. Now, I thought Matt Fink, like you said, I thought he had his best day of practice this past week on yesterday's practice. Yeah. Now, if he continues that in the next 2 practices. He threw a
lot to Tyler Vaughn's, by the way. He said, I think 3 in a row that were 10-yard passes to Tyler Vaughn's. He's like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that again. I'm going to do that again.
And I remember the second one, he gets out of he gets out of trouble in the pocket. He rolls to his right and finds him. Tyler Vaughn's coming back. That's the type of thing. That's the type of sync that you have to develop with your receivers. That's what you want to see. Now, I think when you have an opportunity to throw to a guy like Tyler Vaughns or Amon-Ra, those are the guys you should target. But when you're scrambling, that's when you really want to target those guys because you know they'll go up and make a play for you. And I thought he did a really nice job getting out of the pocket and finding a guy like Tyler Vaughns on that play. I thought he had his best day. Now, if he has 2 really good days in a row leading up to the scrimmage, has a good scrimmage, you can't say he's not in the competition. So that's the thing with this competition is that no one's just straight out been great every day. I didn't think JT Daniels was very good at all on Monday compared to how he has been in the past. So do you immediately say, well, he was great on Saturday, so he's got the job? No, it's still an ongoing process. And who kind of pulls himself out at the end of this week could lead to 2 guys, but you never know. If Matt Fink is world blazing, the other guys aren't, then it's still a 3-man race.
I think it would have to be that. I think Fink would have to be world blazing. But, he had his day on Tuesday. He has his day on Wednesday. I forget which day it is. Today's Thursday. He had his day on Wednesday. He's probably not going to get a whole lot of first-team reps today. So then that might have been his last real shot before the scrimmage to kind of show everybody. So we'll see.
And obviously the scrimmages mean more. I mean, Clay Helton said it. Brian Ellis said, hey, you want to see when they use the term live bullets several times.
And calling it preseason games, which is...
Yeah, Clay Helton has called it a preseason game 1 and preseason game 2 for the scrimmages. So I don't know if technically there's preseason game 3 for that close scrimmage that we won't be able to see.
There's a mock game, I think. It's preseason game 1 and 2, then a mock game.
Do you go into mock week and mock game without a starter? Do you try that with 2 guys? I mean...
Or 3, who knows?
You shouldn't go into it with 3. At some point, you need to pare this down.
Yeah, you would think so. And, and the other thing, too, is we don't get to watch what's going on in the meetings. There's a lot that's going on. I talked with Dan Weber about this way back when, Matt Leinart and Matt Castle were vying for the job. And if you talk to Norm Chow, who's the offensive coordinator afterwards, Leinart owned the meet. He knew everything that was going on. He was really good on the stuff we didn't see on the field. I thought Castle looked better. I thought he looked better in the spring and stuff like that when they were competing. I think it was the spring, and then he was named after that. Castle looked like the better quarterback to me, but we didn't see the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. So behind the scenes, apparently Leinart was a lot better. Now Matt Castle was really, he had a still long NFL career, so it's not like he was a bad quarterback or anything. But he never got to start while he was at USC. We think JT Daniels is doing pretty well behind the scenes as well, but we're not there to see that.
I mean, Hilton did say he's smarter than some of the coaches, JT Daniels. Which
I would think that's not
odd soundbite to say. But we've got a flow of questions saying, so then does Matt Fink transfer if you narrow it down to Jack Sears and JT Daniels?
So we saw LSU had 2 quarterbacks transfer this week, in one day.
Their competition got pared down in half just that way. Okay, you 2 guys, we're probably not going to be the starters. All right, peace out, coach.
We're done.
See you, Ed.
My gut feeling is it's not Fink probably wouldn't transfer, but you never know what's going on with guys like that. But he was the one guy I thought if he doesn't win, he's probably going to stick around.
Now, one thing that could factor into it is where is he at academically? Because this will be his 3rd year. I know they talk about a lot is doing a 3-year plan of getting you in early if they can, so you can start your classes, be done after your 3rd year, and then if you need to, that's when you can leave for the NFL, or that's when you can leave for another school. He could be a graduate transfer if he's close on his grades, and I don't know if that's the case. Maybe that's something we should ask him in the week leading up. Is where exactly are you academically, and does that become an option for him? Because then, if you stay and get your degree at USC, if you're on that track, then you can finish it up this year. You stay, and if there's an injury or whatever, then maybe you're used, and if not, then you can say, hey, let me go look for another opportunity, and you don't miss a year. Where if you transfer immediately, and then next year you have to sit out a year while you're waiting on that. Whereas if he gets his degree, you can play immediately.
Sure.
The other noticeable thing from that scrimmage was USC's defensive line, J2 Fele, guys like him. But when talking to the coaches after they got to review the tape, they said it wasn't so much on USC's O-line, those sacks. It was about quarterbacks holding on to the ball too long. How do you feel on that whole scale?
I think that's utter crap, to be honest. I talked to Harvey Hyde about it yesterday, too. We did our podcast. And so here's what happened. So we talked to Brian Ellis. So there was 9 sacks in the scrimmage. A lot of them came early. 4 on Fink, 4 on Sears, and 1 on JT Daniels. And JT Fele had a couple really nice, just beat the guy in front of him, got a couple of sacks. It was pretty spread around what was going on. And then there was question. I think the first question to Brian Ellis was about like JT Daniels' performance, who only got sacked one time, and he said, "Well, he started off kind of slow." I'm like, well, he didn't miss a pass until late in the scrimmage, so I don't get that. But I think Brian Ellis had a talking point, and he went right into, we have to do a better job of getting protection and stuff like that. Like Daniels didn't. He only got sacked one time. It was just kind of weird the way he went into it. It was like this talking point that he had on the, like he wanted to get out. It wasn't the offensive line's fault. It was, we didn't, the quarterbacks moved off their spot. You can't just protect everywhere. And they didn't get rid of the ball fast enough. And Clay Helton said the same thing. So
and T. Martin did too. So that's three coaches had the same script, which is a little interesting.
So I'm not saying it's like that didn't happen at all, but I'm saying like that was the message they wanted to get out. I do think the offensive line got beat up more than what they were saying, and I think they're trying to protect it. There's a lot of fire against the offensive line because of the way they played in the Cotton Bowl, and to give up 9 sacks in the scrimmage, it's like, okay, everyone's going to be looking at that. So that's my conspiracy theory thing. Play the X-Files music. I think that was their talking point. They decided on that, and that's what they were getting out there.
I think it was partly on the quarterbacks too. I think there were opportunities there for them to get rid of the ball quicker or to throw it away that they didn't. Now, does that lead to 9 sacks? Maybe not. But now they said that there were 2 to 3 physical beats, and the rest of them were on the quarterback.
Yeah, Brian Ellis said like 7 of the 9 were on the quarterback.
I think I would flip it the other way. I think there was 2 to 3 that were on the quarterback, so they should have got rid of the ball, and the other ones are on. Give the credit to the defensive line.
Completely understandable.
If you're talking about physical beats this early in the season, is that kind of bad to introduce that phrase? Because we heard that a lot towards the end of the season when USC's O-line tended to decline.
Well, I think that also sends a message to the players, like, look, you just got beat.
Yeah.
And the coach is saying it in the meeting. Now, he doesn't, he's saying it in the media. He's not calling them out by name. He's not like, so-and-so, you got beat, but.
Jay Tufele just manhandled you or whatever.
Yeah. But maybe that's what that meant. That might be the conversation in the meeting.
Yeah.
Which I know it is in the offensive line meeting.
You don't know what's worse. Like, okay, say you're mano a mano with some guy and he just beats you that time. Like, that's going to happen every once in a while. I don't think that's terrible. But when there always breaks down in the protections and stuff, some of that could be on the quarterback too if he doesn't identify, where the pressure's coming from. They have to do all that kind of stuff. But if it looks like there's confusion on the offensive line, I think that's where a lot of the fans get upset, where it's like, hey, well, how did the best defensive end just rush in and you had like a tight end on him? It seems like more of a scheme thing or a breakdown than physical. So there's a lot of ways you can kind of get beat on the offensive line. They were putting most of the blame on the quarterbacks, which I think some of the blame can go there, but I agree with Shotgun. I don't think most of it was there.
So how do you balance out USC's D-line is pretty good, USC's O-line is questionable? How do you balance out that scale?
I mean, I think the defensive line is doing really well, and you're seeing, similar to what Ohio State would do, they're putting in packages, and they're bringing guys for their first team. You're bringing in completely different looks depending on the down and distance, whatever they want to bring. They call it the Trojan, and there's like the bulky, I forget what beef one or something. They're bringing in different defensive lines, and you're seeing people that are, there's people sharing these first team reps, and sometimes there's like 3 defensive tackles, 3 big guys, or they'll mix it up a little bit. I like the look, and I think all the guys kind of bring something different to the table, and they're all going to get a chance to play, and they're all going to stay fresh. So that's one of the things that's been, USC fans have been harping on, making sure you can get that rotation going. It seems like they're doing it. We're seeing it in practice. I think it's going to be significant, and if they can keep guys fresh, it's going to work well. But to answer your question, yeah, I think the defensive line has been playing really well. There's a lot of different bodies, a lot of different people you can put in there, even with the guys like Porter and stuff, being out. And the offensive line, I think, has still been a work in progress. It's still been up and down. There's some days I thought they've looked pretty good and they've run the ball well behind that line. There's other days where it just seems like they're confused and pretty inconsistent. So I would say the defensive line has played a lot better than the offensive line. I don't know if you agree, but
I think the defensive line has been really good. I don't think it helps the offensive line that they've had potentially 4 starters be out. So Chuma Adoga just came back. He was not in that scrimmage at all. He's their best offensive lineman. So he's out for the scrimmage. You have Austin Jackson and Clayton Bradley have both been out this week. Those are guys fighting for that left tackle position with Chuma out.
Clayton was playing on the right side.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's 2 more potential starters. You have Andrew Voorhees out this week. I don't think it helps that offensive line group now granted they have the veteran guys and they have guys they can put in there that are veterans, and there's been opportunities
there's 15 scholarship offensive linemen. So I mean, you can make something work there.
Yeah, but I think that first group needs to get together and be able to learn each other and be able to communicate, so you don't have those errors that we saw in the Ohio State game where it was communication errors. I think that is more of a concern than the physical beats. The physical stuff, hey, you just got to work on technique. You got to figure the stuff out. And they say that they're stronger and things like that. I think that you can physically see some of the guys are bigger and whatnot. So I think that they'll be better in that regard. And honestly, we don't really know if the physicality and all that talk about physicality and what impact that actually is going to have until they get on the field for a real game. Because is it just the defensive line is really good? And I think there's some very talented guys there. With Jay Tufele, we're finally seeing what we saw in the Army Bowl. Like I said, I thought he was the best defensive lineman there over Marlon Tuipulotu. Brandon Keely obviously wasn't even there.
Right.
I thought he was the best guy, and then he comes and doesn't do anything last year. So I think as a redshirt freshman, he's a guy that can break out and have a really big year. Tuipulotu still working his way back from the injury. I don't think we've seen him be as explosive as maybe he was last year.
Yeah.
But he's still a run stuffer in the middle. Brandon Keely, obviously that. And then some of the guys like Liam Jimmons is having a really good camp. Kenichi Udeze pointed him out last week as probably having the best camp so far. He's also out with injury now. He was out yesterday. So you're seeing guys getting mixed and thrown in there. And, we're not even talking about the older guys, Malik Dorton and Christian Rector, who still are working with the first team. Those are the starters right now. So it's those second team guys that are getting in there and eating up, some of those reps as well.
Connor Murphy, I think, has been pretty good too.
Connor Murphy has had a really good camp. They moved him back out of that Predator spot, and he's done really well with Jordan Iosefa and Porter Gustin being moved, or Porter Gustin being out and Iosefa being moved to middle linebacker. I think he's taken advantage of that opportunity there. So when you have guys go down, you want to see guys step in and make the most of their opportunities. And even a guy on the offensive line that Clay Helton said has been really good is Jalen McKenzie, who was getting left tackle reps yesterday.
Yeah,
with
I
the
talked
first
to him
team
yesterday. He was first team in it. Yeah.
So I think that's what you want. When you have those injuries, you want to see guys step up and feel it. And that's the thing this year. They talked about it. We have the depth this year. We have the opportunity where we can be more physical because we can roll guys in and out and stuff like that. So I think you're seeing that more. Unfortunately, we're seeing 20-plus guys be out during practices, which you would hope to get that pared down and whittled down by the time you get to that first game. We'll see how exactly it comes out.
How much does that depth and talent help or encourage Clancy to have more of a rotation? Or is it still that quote-unquote trust issue with him?
I mean, every time I talk to him this fall, he's been pretty clear. It's his circle of trust has definitely expanded. He knows this is the deepest team he's had while at USC. I think there's some frustrations with some of the younger guys because he does like people to just do what he wants them to do. But I think he trusts a lot more of these guys. And maybe some of it was what Ohio State did in the Cotton Bowl, and everyone's like, hey, why doesn't USC do that? There might have been some encouragement from Clay Helton to do something like that, but he definitely seems a lot more comfortable. It's not we haven't really seen him do these kind of things before. The way the defensive line was coming in and out, where you could have Dorton and Rector coming in, or coming out of Jay Tufele and Tuipulotu or whatever it was. They're swapping guys on the first team. It's not like they're changing teams or anything. So that's definitely something different. So I think it's kind of all part of it for Clancy Pendergast. But I do expect to see a lot more rotation.
I think the fact that you have guys that are performing on those second teams and guys that look like maybe they should be in the conversation for first team. Those guys are pretty equal versus when Stevie Tuipulotu came in, you're like, well, that guy's starting.
Yeah.
They don't have anybody right now because they had lost 4 or 5 defensive linemen the year before. And you're like, well, there's nobody that we really trust right now. Nobody that do you think that guy's going to go in there and make a lot of plays? No, not really. Maybe they'll learn, work their way up. And the same thing when Rasheem Green finally, played up to his potential after, struggling his freshman year. You're like, there's nobody that's equal to Rasheem Green out there. Rasheem Green should be out there as much as possible, and that's what happened. But now I think you see with Brandon Keely and Tufele, they bring maybe a little bit different skill set than Malik Dorton or a Christian Rector when Christian Rector moves outside, different things like that. So I think that's part of it is that those guys are doing some really good stuff, whereas the second string before, not so much. Or even you look at the safety position last year, yes, Chris Hawkins and Marvell Tell are definitely the best 2 guys out there. They know what they're doing. You saw the freshmen making mistakes, even though guys like Bubba Bolden is very talented, and Isaiah Paul-Mao, maybe he can get in there before he got injured. But they were making mistakes, whereas those veteran guys were not making those mistakes. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing from that safety spot on the other end is who's going to make the least amount of mistakes is the guy that's going to be trusted to go in there. They don't necessarily – I don't think Clancy wants necessarily his first priority is a guy that's going out there and going to make a lot of interceptions. He wants the guy that's not going to make the mistakes.
Right, yeah.
And what you had what their issues were last year were at cornerback, and you didn't really have a bunch of bodies to put in after that because they were banged up at that position. I remember Clancy said they went to the Cotton Bowl with 3 healthy bodies at that cornerback position. So I think that was the difference there between being able to sub guys in because they didn't have anybody to do that with.
Let's go to a question, shall we? An international question from Kobe, who just went away. He says, "Ciao from Italia. Do you believe this team will overall be better than the 2017 squad? More consistent, good play."
So better than the 2017 squad. Okay, so 2017 squad did win the Pac-12, right? Well, so they could be better than that? Or you mean like better overall, like better record? What
When
do
you
think?
say consistent, I think they're definitely going to be more consistent. Now the question mark becomes the quarterback position versus, you had a guy who's picked 4th overall to now you have potentially a freshman or a redshirt freshman or a redshirt sophomore that combined have, 15 offensive snaps between them in a game? So I think that's the biggest issue. And you have an offensive line that is veteran offensive line. If they play well, then I think that takes a lot of pressure off those quarterbacks. I think the defense is going to be more consistent this year. I don't think you'll see as many busts with the deep plays. Now, that's still to be determined because we saw a bunch of big plays in the scrimmage, but again, I mentioned 2 of those were against Elijah Griffin, 1 of those against Isaac Taylor-Stewart. Those are freshmen. Those guys are going to get better and better as the season progresses. I don't think that they're going to be thrown out there to start the season. So we'll see how it kind of progresses there. I think that they have a little bit more trust in that defensive secondary now than they did last year if they can get that safety spot opposite Marvell Tell kind of figured out.
I think defensively it's just going to be an improved team. Even you losing guys like Uchenna and Rasheem and Chris Hawkins, getting Porter Gustin back, I think is going to be huge. But just the overall depth, they can withstand a couple of injuries, and it will be okay. I really feel like this is going to be a better defensive team than last year. I'm not sure on the offensive side of the ball. I think that the offensive line we talked about 10 times is key. They have to play better. There's bodies, there's talent, there's experience, there's starting experience, there's veterans there, there's leadership there, and you've got a 3rd-year offensive line coach. There's no excuse that this offensive line shouldn't perform well, but I'm not convinced that they will. So if they don't, I don't know if it really matters who's going to come in at the quarterback spot, but you have a potential superstar in JT Daniels. You love the wide receiving core. I think that the running backs aren't super deep, but I think they can all play. All 4 of those guys can play. There are only 4 of them, and you can get 2 guys injured like nothing. So who knows what's going to happen there? And I think special teams will be better. They cannot play worse than last year. So I think there's the potential to be an actual better team where maybe you finish with a similar record, but you don't have like blowout losses and a disappointing loss like on Friday night to Washington State. But if the offensive line doesn't come together, or special team still plays poorly, one of the young quarterbacks doesn't play that well, there's a lot of potential for more losses too. So I would lean on the potential to be more consistent, especially on the defensive side, but there's just too many questions right now for me on the offensive side.
With special teams, do you think that they can't be worse than last year, or they're going to be better than last year?
It was bad last year. It really was. So I think they got the message though too. I think
I'm just saying, what have you seen that makes you think that?
I think they changed the way they were practicing in the spring. I think they're kind of back to the way they were practicing, unfortunately, more in the fall. So there's a lot of special teams. There's more standing around than what I would like to see. But because John Baxter is now only doing special teams, he's not doing the tight end stuff. It seems to have changed somewhat. I kind of think that Clay Helton got the message. It seems like they got the message on the rotation stuff. I think they're going to perforun better on the special team. That's just my gut feeling. So
they have more bodies there too. I mean, they have some more walk-ons now. Yeah. I know Clay talked about Chase McGrath. At one point, he had an injury. They didn't really have anybody to go to because Michael Brown was already out with a torn ACL. That they were debating. It was on whether it be the 33 or something, or maybe the 27. That's a normal field goal, a 44-yarder, but with Chase being injured, is like, do we go for a 4th and 5, or do we try to kick with an injured kicker? Whereas now they have some more bodies. How much they'll trust those guys, that's still a question mark, obviously. But they have, I think, 3 more kicker and punters. They have an extra snapper now. Yeah. So you have those extra bodies. I think that never hurts, having extra walk-ons at those special teams positions.
Yeah, and I'm never concerned about, like, I don't really think about, like, the kicker and the punt. It's like, that's fine. They're going to do their job. If a guy misses a 40-yard field goal, whatever, like, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about just breakdowns and coverages. When you're talking about trying to flip the field and you can't get the field position right and you're giving up big returns and you can't return the ball ever yourself, those are just, that's this hidden yardage that's just going to kill you, and you put a lot more pressure on your other units. So that's what I'm more concerned about. Yeah, if a guy misses a field goal, hits a field goal, like, okay, whatever. But it's more about, do you send out 10 guys for the PAT? Like, stuff that you shoot yourself in the foot. If your coverage breaks down, things like that, stuff you can control. You got plenty of athletes out there. That stuff shouldn't be as bad as it was last year.
Interesting stat I found. Last year they had the least number of punt returns per game, because this is a 14-game season. Least number of punt returns per game in the history of USC.
Has USC been around a while? Like, is that a long time? Or
I think that's a while.
Okay, so 100 and something times this was.
So they only returned 21 punts last year. Returned it all. 21 punts. Not necessarily those were positive returns, but 21 punts in 14 games, which is 1.66 per game.
Yeah.
The least amount they've returned previously was they had 18 one year in a 10-game season. So
that's nuts.
Douglas says, were we spoiled by a Dory as far as special teams? Yes.
Anytime you have a Dory, you're
Yep.
spoiled. Whether it be cornerback, whether it be punt return, kick return, whether it be just talking to the guy on the field.
I mean, someone tweeted out from the Bears practice, someone was trying to catch 6 punts in their arms. A Dory was doing that at USC. Like, he had 5. Like, he's just unbelievable. So yes, Douglas, yes.
He's that's an individual making plays. And I'm talking, that's, if you're going to rely on that and not like blocking schemes and things, that's where the problem is. So if you don't have a Dory, does that mean you can't return punts? That's basically what happened. So if you don't have a Dory Jackson, you should still be able to return punts. And USC did not.
We have a lot of questions about the strength and conditioning. As far as injuries go, can you necessarily pin the amount of injuries on stretching and conditioning?
No, you can't do that. You can look for consistent trends. I think you've talked about that too, and maybe we can talk about some of the injuries. If everybody's hurting their hamstring, then maybe that's something they're not stretching this or doing that or whatever. But it's such. Injuries happen. You can't just say, oh, it's definitely on this, it's definitely on that. So I think that's really can be unfair. I think you can be very critical of the strength staff, like all that kind of stuff. You can certainly be critical of that, but you can't just make the conclusion like, Porter Gustin hurt his meniscus, it's the strength and conditioning program. He's his own strength and conditioning program. So if you had to blame anyone, it would probably be him because he controls that more than anybody.
Yeah, I think when you have injuries in bunches, now you have 4 hamstring injuries right now, 3 hip concerns, 2 meniscus tears. Some of those are just happenstance. You get 2 meniscus tears, that happens. Knee gets caught or whatever. But when you have those bunches, that's when you're like, wait, do we need to address something? That's when you have to look and see if there's something you need to do. They've had a lot of hips the last 2 years.
Hips, hamstrings.
And now maybe that's just because hips are being diagnosed more, and you have the hip surgery that can, basically it scrapes the bone, the labrum there. They have a labrum surgery to make you, so you can open up your hips a little bit more. And I think that's good for players. You never heard about that previously.
Right.
So maybe that's just something that's happening more often now. It's like, hey, we want to give somebody a little bit more flexibility. They're going to have hip surgery. Olawale Batiku, he's very stiff as far as a pass rusher. He couldn't change direction. So maybe if you're able to, and he had double hip surgery, and maybe that helps him become a more flexible pass rusher in the future. He's probably not going to play this year. If he does, it'll be late in the year. Clay was asked about it yesterday. He said, expect it to be a long time before you see him, basically.
Yeah. Use the new rule, he could play like the last 4 games and still redshirt.
Yeah, so he has not redshirted yet. So, we heard in the spring that he was a potential redshirt candidate because of this hip surgery. It's like Clay said, it's about a 6-month kind of rehab when you have the hip surgery. Now, when you have 2 of them, maybe that takes a little bit longer. We're seeing Wole on his social media and stuff doing a lot of balance exercises and different things that work on your hip. But you also see that he is – one leg is physically smaller than the other leg from where he's had this surgery. So maybe that's just how that you're trying to do is open up hips a little bit more. You saw Zach Banner do it. You had Trayvon Sidney. So it's different positions. So I don't know if that's a big concern. Now, if you have a lot of hip pointers or something, I think the hamstrings are a little bit of a concern. Now, granted, hamstrings happen probably your most common fall camp injury, so
Yeah.
I don't know how much concern there, but that's what you want to look for. You want to look for those trends, and that's when you start worrying about strength and conditioning. If you have trends of the same injuries over and over, then it's like, hey, we're doing something wrong because we're having the same injuries. We're working too much on this one muscle group or not this other one, whatever it is. That's when you have to address it. But, I mean, there's just been a lot of injuries. Now, I talked to Tyler Petit yesterday and asked him kind of about the injuries. He said it's the nature of the beast. He said this quote from the cool thing is that we have a really amazing training staff. We have coaches that are very understanding and they know what is best for us being around the game so long. So a lot of the coaches are former quarterbacks in different positions. So they said they don't want guys coming back early. They want everybody to be ready for game one. And that's basically what you're doing right now. Is you got guys that are nicked up but not that are hurt but not injured, and you're seeing them sit out to make sure they don't have a significant injury going on. You see guys like Cam Smith and Keely Ross, they missed basically a full week. They're now working their way back and doing some limited stuff right now, so hopefully you get them back soon. Asked Keely, basically, we're going to get you back soon? And he said, oh yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back.
Yeah. It's another era. I think a lot of these guys will be playing, but it's very precautionary now. So you're seeing guys sit out.
We're one of the programs that we can see practice every day and see when guys are going half speed or limited versus if it's not a long-term injury, some reporters don't hear about it. So that's also a factor of why you're here.
Yeah, you get to see it a lot. If you're covering UCLA, you probably don't get to see that stuff. I mean, they can watch the first 15 minutes or so if you get some information.
Yeah. Let's go a little bit rapid fire. If you want to get your questions in before we wrap it up, put your questions in. Someone said, do you see Amon-Ra St. Brown being the third wide receiver?
Yes.
Yeah.
Though I will say Velus Jones has really stepped up his game.
He's
looked
good.
really good.
Check out my interview with him.
And I think that's a product of the same thing you saw with the quarterbacks in the fall versus the spring is that when you get somebody there and looks like they're going to take your spot, you start stepping your game up.
He's good. I think, I mean, I think Randall Grimes has played pretty well. I like Trayvon Sidney's played well at times, but St. Brown, it seems like he's on that level with Pittman and Vaughns.
Someone asked, what have we seen from Devin Williams? We're seeing a lot of him because Joshua Mortabebe and Michael Pittman are out right now.
And Randall Grimes was out for a little while, so he just got back as well.
Yeah. He's a big body. They don't seem to throw it high enough to him a lot of the times.
And he lets it be known.
Yeah. But he's had some hands issues too. So I think he's coming along. He's an impressive looking kid, but I think he's still kind of a work in progress.
I think he's your traditional freshman wide receiver versus Amon-Ra being a little bit different guy.
Yeah.
Who will be the starting running back?
I kind of think Cedric Ware still will be like the first guy coming in, but like sort of like what they did last year, and you'll have Stephen Carr. I think that'll be the two of them. But they love, Malapai is great. We'll see if Marquise Stepp is going to. I think he's going to end up playing a bunch this year because it's going to be hard to keep everybody healthy. But I really think Ware's he looks a little faster. He's got moves. He can catch the ball. They have a really nice group of backs, just not a deep group of backs. I wonder, 4 scholarship running backs.
What is deep to you, though? I feel like USC's always kind of had 4 scholarship backs, right?
I don't know, man. Pete Carroll sometimes would have 9,
He loved the running back position.
Yeah, he did love how, but that's it's not a lot. 1 or 2 guys get hurt, and now you're at 2
normal.
dudes. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'd like to see what the average is, but I would think the average is more in the 6 range than 4. But
I think 5 is where you want to be pretty much at all times.
5, okay.
And if you have more than that, so be it. But it's hard to get 6 guys involved unless it's a freshman. You're going to redshirt or whatever it may be. But 4 is fine. Usually you don't have more than 2 injured at a time. Now, USC has had some streaks where, yesterday, they had 1 healthy tight end.
Yeah.
Tyler Petit left it towards the end of the practice. Didn't look like it was anything serious, but Josh Fowler's the only healthy tight end out of 5 guys. And one of them, Austin Appleby, is a walk-on, but he's a guy that's been in there a lot during the summer and stuff. So you would just consider him part of that group, and they have 1 guy. So sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
But if they were somehow to get all 4 running backs injured, what you can do is you can put Velus Jones back there. They've used him in the backfield some. You can put some other guys that you have at the wide receiver position that have some running back skills. You could even throw Isaac Taylor Stewart over there if you needed to because he played running back in high school and was really good. Super speedy on the outside and has some bulk, so he can take some hits and deliver some hits. So they have some options if they needed to really go to it. But I think that you'll see all 4 of those guys because you'll get some guys nicked up. I've tried to think back. I've done this previously. When's the last time USC had a running back who was not out at any point in their career? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It basically just doesn't happen.
I don't remember, yeah.
I mean, Justin Davis missed time. Curtis McNeil missed time. Trey Madden missed time. I think Silas Redd, even during his 1 year, I think he missed a game or two.
Yeah.
Running backs just get banged up. It's the nature of the beast, as Tyler Petit would say. So I think you just deal with that, and I think you'll see those guys battle through it and continue to play. I think you'll see all 4 of them get some opportunities. I think by the end of it, Stephen Carr is the guy that has the most carries at the end of the year, or the most touches, I'll say, because they'll use him a lot in the passing game. But I think Cedric Ware, there's been a lot of talk about. I mean, Clay Helton has been raving about him, how he came in the best shape of his life, how he's breaking more tackles at the second and third levels to create some more explosive plays. So I think he's going to have a good year, as Ryan predicted.
I had to do like a 24/7 sports video, and they asked for a breakout player of the year. I picked him, so I was like, all right,
Yeah.
He's got that potential.
Marquise Stepp has been out for the last couple of days in concussion protocol. He had an ankle or knee injury previous to that, so got to make sure he's healthy. The other guys have been pretty good and healthy. And you're actually seeing Ben Easington, the walk-on. You're seeing him a lot because they're not
Number 37, is that?
Number 37, because they're not putting a lot of strain on those guys. I think you're getting Stephen Carr in there a little bit more just because you want to get him back fully healthy, full speed. You're not seeing Cedric Ware doing a ton of stuff in the practices, I don't think.
Right.
Ken wants to know who will be doing punt and kick returns this season. He says Amon-Ra, ?
I don't think we really know the answer to that
We
yet.
don't,
No.
no. I think he's in the mix. We've seen Tyler Vaughn's back there, Jane Harris. I think there's kind of the usual suspects, but I don't think they've made any kind of determination yet.
Yeah, and I don't think they've really whittled it down like they normally do after
No.
a couple practices. Like, okay, there's still 5 or 6 guys that are
Yeah.
receiving punts, and 5 or 6 guys are back there working on kickoff returns as well.
Dominic Davis will be in the mix for kickoff stuff, I think, mostly. Right? I don't think he's doing the.
Yeah, it's gotten a little smaller though, a little bit smaller,
Little bit,
but
yeah.
not
I
as
haven't paid
small.
that much attention.
Yeah, it's gotten a little smaller. Now it's like Tyler Vaughn's. I'm trying to look for my notes because they're done. It's Tyler Vaughn's, Amon-Ra, Jonathan Lockett,
Janae
Dom,
Harris.
and Jane.
Yeah.
Those are the guys
For
right
the
now
punt?
for both. They were
Well,
doing
you have
both
Bayless,
yesterday.
obviously, for kickoff return.
That's why I kept asking you, have you seen Bayless? Because he wasn't doing it yesterday.
Oh. Dominic Davis was, though, at
We'll
least
look
at
for
the
it there.
A
scrimmage.
little
so.
inside baseball there.
Nice.
Chris wants to know about Elijah Vera Tucker. Does he have any chance of getting in the starting lineup this season?
Brandon Lopez also asked, do you guys see Elijah Vera Tucker taking over right guard? I believe that he's a better player than Voorhees, and it seems the O-line needs some changes, and it's been struggling.
Here's my question. USC has a lot of quote-unquote veteran guys or guys that are older, and then you have younger guys that on tape that we send out to the interwebs, people are like, oh, that young guy looks good. Does he replace an older guy? Do you ever see USC doing that? Or is the old guard there to stay?
I don't think. I mean, the old guys, as in Toa and Chuma, those
That's why I
guys,
said
and
quotes.
Chris Brown, those guys are staying in there. Andrew Voorhees, on the other hand, is the same class as Elijah Vera Tucker.
Yeah,
It's
but
just you have a redshirt
wrong side.
freshman versus a sophomore now. Now, if Andrew Voorhees is not healthy, he's got a knee injury right now. He's been out for a couple practices. He had surgery on his meniscus in the spring, and it kind of had flared up on him. Probably had some swelling there. So I think if he's not able to get healthy, or then I think Elijah Vera Tucker is the first guy that takes over one of those guard positions. Is Elijah Vera Tucker going to take over for Chris Brown? Definitely not. I think that Elijah Vera Tucker is the first guard to come in if you need somebody, though. And I thought he's looked really good.
Yeah.
And, but I think Andrew Voorhees has looked fine as well. I don't think I've seen that big of a discrepancy there that you would necessarily make that move because it hasn't been a battle like it has been at the or in the left tackle position between Clayton Bradley and Austin Jackson. It's not splitting one's
No.
reps.
It could have been. I mean, maybe they should have done that a little bit more, but it hasn't been that way. But
Yes.
now he's getting a chance.
Since it hasn't been that way, I don't think. Now, if Voorhees comes back and you start seeing the split, then we'll consider it a battle and him potentially moving into that spot. But right now, I don't think that he is on the same level as Voorhees in the coaches' minds.
Cool.
Alexander wants to know about John Houston. Why haven't we heard about Houston a lot?
He just does his job. He's out there. Hasn't made there haven't been any kind of super wow plays, I would say, from him. But yeah, he's out there doing his job. He's gonna be there. So I don't think you have to worry about him.
Yeah, I got asked this on the way into the Coliseum, and you basically, when you're doing your job as a middle linebacker and you're not going full pads practices all the time, you're not going to hear a bunch about him because they're there. Okay, he's there in the hole to make the tackle. You touch him, the play's over. It's whistle dead. You don't see him knocking heads or anything like that. When you're in the full pass practice, he's making the tackles that he needs to make. It's he hasn't had any interceptions or anything of note in that regard, but he's just doing his job as a middle linebacker.
Yeah.
So I think that's why you haven't heard much about him.
Eric says, with Elijah Griffin making a strong first impression, how does Isaac Taylor Stewart compare to him?
I think he's a little behind right now. I think we've just seen Elijah Griffin, I'm not trying to get out names, making a few more plays out there. When you talked about the near pick six at the scrimmage, that was him. That he dropped the ball. He had the potential to do that there. I thought they both did pretty well, but if you had to pick of the two, incoming 5-star cornerbacks, I would put Griffin a little bit ahead of Isaac Taylor Stewart right now.
So Ronnie Bradford basically said that Elijah Griffin's a little bit farther ahead because of the coaching and stuff that he got previously. And Elijah Griffin has made some plays, but Elijah Griffin's also given up some big plays.
He has.
I mean, he was the one. He gave up 2 touchdowns in that scrimmage as well as almost having a pick 6. So I think you're seeing him more active in positive and negative ways than Isaac Taylor Stewart, where Isaac Taylor Stewart is still learning, and maybe he's the guy that's standing back instead of jumping into a rep.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that is kind of still learning on the sideline than necessarily being the guy that's first thrown in there.
I think because OG is ahead, it doesn't really mean anything on ITS. I think ITS is just having a normal freshman trajectory, and I don't think that you can count that against him just because OG is doing a little bit better.
Similar to Devin Williams and Amon-Ra.
Yeah.
You're asking a lot to coming in as a true freshman in a couple of weeks and doing a lot of things. And if someone can do it, it doesn't mean someone else isn't that good. I mean, we saw Tyler Vaughn's red shirt. He's still really good. We saw Jay Tufele red shirt. It looks like he's going to be really good. So, I'm not saying that Isaac Taylor Stewart's going to redshirt, but just because he's not that same level yet, I wouldn't be cause for concern.
Yes.
I got a question over here from Scooter. What's the thoughts on the defense? Will it bend but don't break style, or more along the lines of dominant? He has said also shouts out to Trader Joe's. He works for them as well.
Oh, hey, Trader Joe's. We love Trader Joe's. They don't sponsor this show, but they sponsor our podcast. Well, good. We'll see. I'll make some calls. What was the question?
Bend but break style, or just a dominant defense?
No, wait. This is a attack. They led the nation in sacks last year. This is attack, force negative plays, leave your corners on an island, and get torch deep. That's what you're going to see that happen. Now, the thing is, you got to limit the getting torch deep kind of stuff. So, and Shotgun talked about that. I think they're going to do that. I think Iman Marshall is going to be a lot better this year. I don't think you're going to see as many penalties. I think he's going to play within himself. I like the way this secondary is shaping up. So if they play well, you're going to give up some big plays. I love that you have these kind of athletes and you force plays. Justin Wilcox, when he was here, and he's doing a really good job, the head coach at Cal. It was a lot of that bend but don't break. They were switching the defense every week, depending on who the opponent was. It just didn't seem to fit with the athletes. These athletes are getting after it. You're putting pressure on the opponent's offense. And for the most part, it works pretty well. Now, they've given up too many big plays. You're taking risks. If they can eliminate some of those, some of the big plays they're giving up and be a little bit less of a risky situation there, I think it's going to work out well.
2 things. Iman Marshall, in 9-10 practices now, I think he's gotten beat once deep. I think the only passes that have been completed on him have been in front of him. I think he's had a really good fall. We never really talked about him because he hasn't had interceptions, but he's been, in the scrimmage.
He's going against Tyler Vaughn's and stuff like that.
And in the scrimmage, in the one-on-one section that they had, he was, he had a couple nice pass breakups in the end zone. He had a really good one-on-one session there. And then the other thing, they gave up the explosive plays, but they were also kind of bend but don't break last year because they would give up a lot of yards and they would just stifle people when they got to the 40. Between the opposing 20 and the 40, they would give up a lot. Okay, they're there at the 40, and then they get the 40 and all right, now we're going to shut you down. They have a couple sacks.
They were playing passive. You're right though.
I agree.
They gave up chunks where you think they're playing off, and it wasn't really that way, but they still gave up these long drives, and then they would kind of. I don't know what it was, but they just got it together when in the red zones and stuff.
Is there any concern for that second corner position? I feel like no one's fully won it yet. Isaiah Langley had that starting the first team reps for the first week, and then you see Greg Johnson has been introduced in first team reps this week. But both of them, I don't know if they seem like one standing out or the other. Is there any concern that there isn't a guy yet?
Greg Johnson has had a really nice camp. He's been noted by some of the coaches for how good of a camp he's had. And he was, like I said, he was on an upward trajectory last year when he got injured and they shut him down with a shoulder injury. Isaiah Langley has been roller coaster ride basically.
He had an interception yesterday.
He'll look really good at times, And then other times he'll give up a couple plays, and I think that's frustrating the coaches a little bit because they expect him to be a consistent guy. So we'll see in the last 2 weeks, if he can elevate his play a little bit and be more consistent. If that's the case, I think he easily wins that starting job. If not, I think Greg Johnson gets. And you might see a similar situation to how they brought in Iman Marshall, how they brought in Adoree Jackson, how they brought in Jack Jones as a freshman, and see Greg Johnson see a similar role to that as a redshirt freshman, where those guys would get a series or maybe 2 a game, and then by the end of the season they started getting 3 or 4, and it just progressed because they knew that those guys were going to be the guys going forward. Another guy that we don't even talk about, Jonathan Lockett.
Yeah.
I think he's been solid. We just don't really hear or see much about him, even though he's a redshirt senior. And I think he's been really good, but
He had a pick yesterday too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Jack Sears in the team portion.
He had the only team pick. Yeah, it was kind of a weird pass, but yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean, will he get some time behind Jalen Harris at nickel and then maybe get some starting corner time? Work. I think he's got the potential. The good thing is there's a lot of options there. There's a lot of depth. There's not 3 cornerbacks going to the Cotton Bowl. They could do a lot of different things and move some pieces around. They have the pieces there to make it a really good secondary.
If someone is struggling, they will have someone else they can
Yes.
put in.
You don't you're not stuck with, oh crap, he's our best option, just leave him in. If Greg Johnson wins his job and he's struggling because he's a freshman or whatever, that's fine. They have other people that can go in and do it.
It's not like Arizona where they're like, do we even have a cornerback?
Yes,
they got Scotty Young back this week, and they're like, Scotty Young's okay. And they're like, oh yeah, Scotty Young's back.
Was he playing safety or corner? Or was he doing? I think they're going to need him at corner. I think, but I don't know.
I think he was playing safety some previously, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Douglas wants to know, Bernard Shermer, is he participating in camp?
He still hasn't been in pads yet, right?
Yeah, he's been in pads. He hasn't been actively thrown in until yesterday. We saw him get thrown into special teams, so kickoff blocking and stuff. I mean, not kickoff blocking. Extra point and field goal blocking, he was thrown in. That was the first time we've actually seen him in the team sessions.
It was shoulder pads, right? He hasn't done the full pads yet.
I don't think he's done full pads.
I
think he wore full pads the other day. I don't think he did much, but I think he wore full pads.
Okay, I'll have to check it out and see. Because he came in late, I think you have to wait 5 practices before he can put full pads on. So maybe he's done that once, but
no, I think earlier this week when they went to full pads on Tuesday, I think he was in full pads.
Okay.
Now I don't know that he did too much. I think it's very cerebral process right now of him trying to learn everything.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's see. Matthew says, are they working Amon-Ra both outside and in the slot? If so, where do you see him fitting best?
He's done both. Yeah, I mean he's
same with Bayless actually.
The thing with the receivers is that they don't just learn the Y position, the X position, the Z position. They move them all around. Like if you look up the PFF Pro Football Focus, look at the snaps in the slot for Michael Pittman and Tyler Vaughn's last year. They're elevated above a lot of the other primary receivers you see on other teams because they move them around. Now some of that is they'll 2 receivers and they'll put them on both on one side. But you see them move those guys around a little bit more because you saw Deontay was playing outside some last year too. They move them around so that and T. Martin or Clay Helton will say, so they can't focus on our one really good guy.
Yeah.
And they did that with Marquise Lee. They did it with Robert Woods. They did it with Nelson Aguilar. Moved those guys around. Juju as well played some slot receiver, just so that the defense can't say, okay, this guy's always on the right side. We're going to have safety help over the top, whenever we can in this defense. Now we got to read. Oh, Juju's in the slot now. Okay, well, how do we key on this? How do we, get an extra defender over top of him? So you can't just set up your defense in one particular way. You have to look at a lot of different options. I think is how they try to do it.
And I think for USC, if you have Pittman and Vaughns and Amon-Ra St. Brown out there, then it's really going to be hard to focus on one of them because they're all pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Adam who says, Levi Jones, what have you seen from him this year or this fall camp, and will he play this year?
Yeah, I think he will. I talked to Johnny Nansen about him a little bit. So he said he's backing up John Houston in their dime thing. Really athletic kid. I like him a lot. I think he's excited to go back to Austin, Texas because he's from Austin. Johnny Nansen was pretty excited talking about him, but it's really just kind of finding that spot of where he's going to be. I think he'll be a special teams contributor again. My gut is you're going to see him more on defense. I'm not sure. He can rush the passer. There's a lot of things he can do. So we'll see. But I'm not sure exactly where yet, but it seems like he's someone they would like to get to work in a little bit more.
And part of the thing is he's been injured. He's been out 5 of the 10 competitive practices so far. He had swelling in his chest, which luckily that was nothing serious. So he missed a couple practices with that, and he had an ankle injury, so he missed the scrimmage, I believe, and a couple other practices. So, he's got to get back healthy and get in the mix. So he's only had 2 consecutive practices twice. So he hasn't made it to 3 consecutive practices. If he practices today, it'll be the first time in fall camp that he's practiced 3 days in a row. So I think that's part of the reason why we haven't seen or heard a bunch from him in the fall camp so far.
We have a question from Daryl that says, how would you compare Helton's coaching compared to his previous 2 years? Better, worse, or the same?
I mean, I haven't seen a game yet, so it's kind of hard to say. I think there's been some changes for sure. There's definitely been some adaptations. I think you hire a young head coach, you want them to grow. From what we've seen so far, it seems like that's happened. They've made some, he's made some adjustments. But we'll see. I don't think you're going to know for sure to answer that question until we see some games.
I think the things they've changed, I think, have been positive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's been interesting introducing crowd noise this early. I think this is the early we've ever heard crowd noise. And he's said multiple times he's thinking ahead because they have young quarterbacks and they're going to go on hostile road environments soon.
Yeah, 3 times in September. So
yeah, and he's thinking ahead, which, I mean, that's a change. And then taking away 7-on-7s team periods for a little bit and just going into team periods for the quarterbacks. I think whether or not it was intentional, the young quarterbacks have made him change some things to get them ready, which I think in turn makes the whole team ready. So I think that is at least different changes we've seen from Helton.
I don't think crowd noise is ever a bad idea.
No.
It's just annoying to us.
Yeah, it's annoying for us
yeah,
on the sideline. It's like you're talking like, blah, blah. You might be screaming, "Hey, shotgun!" and then it stops. You're like, "But they're like, everyone's looking at you because you're still
yelling." Yeah, that
yelling.
happened to me the other day.
And I think they brought music back for some of the warm-up stuff. They did 2 spotting for a while where they would run 2. We haven't seen that for a few practices.
Too many injuries.
Yeah, but you would have 2 basically team periods running at one time, so they could look at the film afterwards. So there's definitely been some adjustments.
Speaking of that, Daryl also, maybe the same Daryl, also asked, do any of the O-line injuries seem serious? I don't really think so. Chuma is back from his injury. You have Andrew Voorhees out with a knee. I think that's just some swelling. I think he'll be okay. Clayton Bradley with a little bit of a back.
That's all Helton said.
Clay
a
Helton
little
said.
bit of a back.
And then Austin Jackson has an ankle injury, but Clay Helton said that he did some limited work yesterday. They're hoping to get him similar limited work today and then possibly be back for the scrimmage. So as of right now, the offensive line looks okay.
I know you said you're not, but Andrew Voorhees, that knee, does that seem like something that can plague him all season long? I mean, did we even know that he had off-season surgery?
They told us we had meniscus surgery in the spring. At the end of the spring, yeah. I asked Clay Helton why Andrew wasn't there at the end of the spring. Apparently, Joey Kaufman said that I said it. So
Sure.
Maybe Joey made that up.
I don't remember that one, but that's
But yeah, he was out at the very end of the spring, and it was just like, he's going to have surgery on the meniscus. And it was like the last week or 2 weeks in, so he wasn't going to be back. So I think sometimes with those things, you get a little swelling once you start going heavy, heavy exercise on it, previously surgically repaired body part. So I think that's just normal.
All right.
I don't think it'd be a big issue.
Okay. I think we're
Should wrap it up?
probably should wrap it up.
We got one. You want one more YouTube one?
Get your
I
last good
apologize
question
for the
in.
Periscope people. I forgot to pull that up, so I wasn't.
Shame,
viewing.
Ryan. Shame.
Oh, so here we got one last. So I didn't have Periscope up, so we didn't see all the previous questions. You don't get to see them, but we have Alex. Who do you think our safety rotation will be?
Daryl had a similar question asking about the safety spot opposite Marvell Tell. I think since no one has really popped above and taken over that spot right now, Keely Ross is still the guy to watch when he
was
gets
like
healthy.
The incumbent, basically.
Yeah, because he had a really good spring at the spots. Clancy said last week he wanted it to be decided by this week. Now this week, Bubba Bolden has basically taken all the first-team reps, or the majority of them. So maybe that's the way they're leaning right now until Keely comes back healthy. I think Keely's a guy that has to be on the field. I think he's super athletic. I think he's really focused in. I thought he looked really good in the spring. When he gets healthy, he's only practiced once so far this fall. So I think he's the guy to watch. I think the guys behind him that are competing are Bubba Bolden. And then behind Bubba Bolden, I think you have the other 3 guys. I think you have Talanoa, I think you have Isaiah Pulamau, and I think you have C.J. Pollard. So right now, I think you would see a 3-man rotation with Bubba and Keely. If the game were this weekend and Keely was healthy, I think that's who you would see mixed in at that other spot opposite Marvell Tell.
Those other 3 guys, I think they've all had some good plays during camp. C.J. Pollard has been a little chippy at times. There's been some. He gets it. he mix it up a little bit. And I think Isaiah Polamalu has improved a lot. I'm just not sure how high people were on him before, but I think he's earned a lot of people's trust. He's getting better. I've got to get more consistent and stuff. And Talanoa, who true freshman who came in the spring, I think he's done some good things too. So they got a lot of good options. It's a very deep group in the secondary.
I think one of the signs that you can tell that Keely is the incumbent is that this week during the special teams periods, Clancy has pulled over Port Augustine, Cam Smith, and Keely, and all those three are injured, and he's having them go through mental reps and going and doing things and kind of coaching them, using that time wisely during special teams when everyone else is standing around. And so if you're bringing Keely over, that kind of tells you where Clancy kind of sees him, if it's worth bringing him over. So.
And I think that's notable because guys like Palaie Naitiote is not over there at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, he's a guy that could obviously use as many mental reps as possible, but it's just those three guys, and those are just the three starters that are out. 3 starters with Keely. So I think that definitely tells you a lot there too.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. That's going to wrap it up for this Thursday's edition of Tunnel Vision. Thank you to everyone who is watching on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook Live. And if you're listening on the podcast, thank you for listening. We will see you guys next Thursday. We're back into normal season schedule next Thursday, so it won't be fall camp blitz of everyday practice.
Yes.
So it'll be Tuesday and Wednesday practice. Thursday will be closed. We will be here, and then next Saturday Saturday after next they're having a close scrimmage. So we'll see you guys after that. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up, guys?
No, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. Sorry that we had an interruption in the
Yes.
Facebook feed. Looks like I think YouTube and Periscope went all the way through. That's good. I don't know what happened. We'll figure out the Facebook thing. But
I'll try to answer some of your guys' YouTube questions here when we get offline, when we stop being live. So I'll try to answer the ones we weren't able to get to.
Yeah, and you can always watch the replays on uscfootball.com. We'll put it up on all these platforms. You can see them all.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys.